Well, joining us now are Liberal strategist Richard Mahoney, Managing Director and Chair of the Advisory Board for the Macmillan Vantage Policy Group, Conservative strategist Tim Powers, Chair of SUMA Strategies, and NDP strategist Tom Parkin, who is Principal with Impact Strategies. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Mike. Hi there.
Richard, I'm going to get you to start us off here. You know, the Trudeau government is taking a hit in the polls over foreign interference. How are individual Liberals feeling about the Prime Minister's handling of this issue?
Well, I mean, I think, folks, it's a tough situation for any PM to be in. In this case, it's Prime Minister Trudeau. But in anything like this, you've got a situation where CSIS is leaking selective information. Yet as Prime Minister, you've got to be very, very cautious about revealing sources, methods, and all those things that go on. So you can't give a very satisfactory answer to say, this is what we know and here's what we know it. One. Two, it's commonplace. He's not the first Prime Minister that has been briefed on foreign interference in elections, and he won't be the last. So, I mean, I think that most Liberals saw what he did this week with the appointment of a special individual to overview it, the referral to the two committees, one, an independent committee of the House that does these things and issued one of the initial reports, or at least part of it that's been leaked, and the National Security Review Agency. So that's the right thing to do, because I think in the end, it doesn't matter what your politics are, whether you're a Liberal or a Conservative or Democrat, you're going to want the assurances that our electoral systems and our elections are, while not immune from foreign interference, are fairly conducted and safe. And the problem, I think, with all this selective leaks is that it does throw some question into that. So that's the challenge that he faces, and the one he's facing this week.
Well, Tim, I'll get you to jump in here, because the Prime Minister has turned this over to CSIS and the Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians to review, and as we heard from Richard, appoint a rapporteur. These are mechanisms entrusted to protect Canadian security. Is the Conservative leader trying to score political points at the expense of national stability by not letting those bodies do their work first?
Well, I think he's trying to score political points. That's a real shock, Michael, that an opposition leader is trying to score political points. But I don't think Pierre Poilievre's the threat here to Justin Trudeau. It's the people who continue to leak memos which paint a picture of a prime minister who may or may not be telling the truth. And that's the problem for him. Poilievre, regardless of his intense partisanship or not, has to point these things out. He does have to manage where he goes so that this can't be turned around on him, as the Prime Minister has tried through deflections about, Conservative MPs and Christina Anderson. But the bigger challenge for the Prime Minister is the ongoing leaking from the security apparatus, and coming to understand why that matters, because it doesn't matter what he says. Every day another story comes up that paints some sort of contradictory picture is another day he's on his back heels.
Now, Tom, we've seen the NDP leader essentially say a pox on both those houses. Which do you find more troubling right now, the Prime Minister's actions or inaction, or the Conservative leader's criticisms?
Well, Mr. Trudeau has got to be the one to be held accountable. He's the Prime Minister. And we have disturbing news stories that we read in the newspaper that talk about activities that are of a foreign government against our democracy, and those are unsettling. And we see Mr. Trudeau evade these things. Now, in terms of partisanship, it seems to me the right thing to do is what most, many people have said, including some Liberals, including past Liberal Cabinet Minister Jane Philpott. Let's just have that proper inquiry, a non-partisan inquiry that has the tools to subpoena and can go in camera when necessary for security reasons, do all those sort of things, and do the proper fact-finding of what went on so that Canadians can be assured, putting it out of the hands of politicians. But see, Mr. Trudeau has not done that, and that is why this continues to be a partisan issue. It's within the reach of Mr. Trudeau to make this into a nonpartisan issue, but he chooses not to.
I'm going to get
That's Mr. Poilievre is going to keep going in his direction as long as Mr. Trudeau lets him.
Well, listen, I'm going to get back to this idea of the independent inquiry, but Richard Pierre Poilievre has asked the Prime Minister some very direct questions, asking whether anyone in the Liberal Party, caucus, or cabinet received money from the Chinese Communist Party. The Prime Minister did not answer those questions. Why not? Will avoidance really further the Liberal cause here?
So I think you sort of put your finger on it there, Michael. The issue is, yes, he's being cautious. Any prime minister in that situation would sort of have to be, given the security implications of this. Like I said, this is not new interference in our election. We've had reports on it before, and we'll have reports on it again. I think he's being cautious. Some, as you suggested, maybe overly cautious in what he says at this point. But two things. The rapporteur's report will be public. He or she may recommend an inquiry. You saw in front of the parliamentary committee this week when the security heads got through, they didn't really tell us anything for the same reasons that I've been suggesting here, which is it's their position that they can't. So that's why he took the double step of referring to the National Security Review Agency, the National Security Committee, and the rapporteur. Yes, it would be easier if the Prime Minister could just be categorical about these things, but I think he's being cautious because the exact extent of what Chinese government operatives on the ground may have done is unknown to him and to many people, I suspect.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the Prime Minister has not ruled out a public inquiry if that's what the rapporteur thinks is necessary. He says he's open to it. But Tim, what if the rapporteur doesn't think it's necessary? What will Conservatives do then?
Well, I suspect they'll still call for a public inquiry, and they'll still continue to put pressure here. There's no political loss in doing that for them. A lot will depend, Michael, on who the rapporteur is and whether that person is truly seen to be imminent and free of partisanship. But just back quickly to something Richard said, there are questions the Prime Minister can say yes or no to. Some of those questions involve the ones he was asked yesterday around, did he see a memo? Did he not see a memo? Challenge for the Prime Minister is not national security and saying yes or no to those questions, it's competency. Because if he did see a memo and didn't act, well, how come? And if he didn't see a memo, why not? So that's why he's also being evasive, to use Tom's word there. So none of this still is helping him, and the national security blanket will take him so far, but it alone will not keep him warm at night.
Okay, let's get back to the public inquiry, though. And Tom, I'll get you in on this. What if the rapporteur says a public inquiry is not necessary?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It very much depends on who this person is, who gives credibility to this possible report. But it comes right back to, do we not want to get to the bottom of this? Is it not clear that this is exactly the kind of situation where an inquiry is called for? I don't understand this double process and throwing the blanket over it by sending it off to the National Security Intelligence Committee parliamentarians, rather than just tackle it, and this reluctance to just deal with this thing head on and take the blows that will come. Because he's, if there is accountability for the Prime Minister in making bad choices, we deserve to know that. We deserve to be protected from that. And so if that's the situation, that needs to come out. And that's not partisan of the opposition. To the degree that there's a blanket being thrown over it, it's partisan of Mr. Trudeau. And the degree to which people will become worried about our democracy, it really is on Mr. Trudeau's head at this point to be absolutely as clear can be that nothing will stand in the way of fact-finding and the truth. And he's not being like that at all.
Well, of course, we'll be watching, as will Canadians right across the country. Richard, Tim, and Tom, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.